A combination of punches to address unrest in Hong Kong. That's how top Chinese officials have described Beijing's latest decision to reform the city's electoral system, along with the controversial national security law that was introduced last year. CNA's Olivia Xiong with this report.
A day after China's largely ceremonial parliament approved sweeping changes to Hong Kong's electoral system, officials from the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office sought to address the move, which has been viewed as another step by Beijing to tighten its control over the territory. The Beijing officials reiterated that reforms are being made to address loopholes and deficiencies that had been exposed by chaos in recent years, as Hong Kong witnessed massive anti-government protests in 2019. They said this showed the system was not secure enough, making it possible for what they called anti-China forces to find their way into government or for external elements to infiltrate Hong Kong. Under the proposed changes, a pro-Beijing committee will get to appoint more Hong Kong lawmakers. The election committee's composition will also be changed, with its membership going up from 1,200 to 1,500 members, including Hong Kong members of China's top political advisory body and legislature, who are viewed as pro-Beijing. There will also be a vetting mechanism to screen potential candidates to uphold the principle of patriots governing the territory. Officials, however, sought to allay concerns that this meant that the opposition camp may be excluded from future elections, instead adding that there would be more broad representation in Hong Kong's Legislative Council.
把不爱国的人特别是反动乱港分子排除在香港特别行政区的管制架构之外，不等于说要把所有的反对派或者范围更广一点的泛民主派全部排斥在管制架构之外因为反动乱港分子和泛民甚至和反对派是不能简单的划等号的反对派里面，特别是泛民里面也有爱国者，他们将来人人可以依法参选依法当选。
But Mr. Zhang said that while one unpatriotic politician is too many, this does not mean they cannot continue their life and work in Hong Kong.
Now, Chinese officials were also asked about the growing international criticism following Beijing's latest move, in particular the US calling it a continuing assault on democracy in the territory. Now, this comes as China and the US get ready to hold face-to-face high-level talks in Alaska next week, their first since the Biden administration came into office.
In response, Chinese officials hit back, saying that changes to Hong Kong's electoral system are purely China's internal affairs, adding that no foreign country has the right to make any irresponsible comments. They also accused the US of having double standards, pointing to how the country had faced unrest following its elections last year, which had seen the storming of the US Capitol in January.
至于美国，您经常会晤的制裁的这个大棒，你刚才提到了我觉得也早已为人所不齿。我们港澳办的同事，包括我们的夏宝龙主任包括今天在座的邓东华主任和我本人去年都被美国政府列入所谓的制裁名单，我们都深以为荣。
With the resolution passed, the National People's Congress Standing Committee will next draft the specific laws before the changes to the electoral system are adopted in Hong Kong. Asked about the impact on the timing of Legislative Council elections, Chinese officials said this will be left to Hong Kong to decide. This comes amid local reports saying they would likely be postponed for a second time. Olivia Xiong, CNA, Beijing.
CNA's Roland Lim has more on the impact these changes would have on Hong Kong.
Make no mistake about it, this is a major shakeup into Hong Kong's political systems. The biggest takeaways from this is, one, the election committee. That's the committee that elects the chief executive, and that next election will happen in 2022, next March. That number will expand from currently 1,200 members to 1,500. So there will be an increase of 300. Now, Currently, the 1200 is made up of four sectors, and that is the business, the professionals, the social groups, as well as the political groups. Now, it's understood that the fifth group, the additional 300, will be made up of mainland patriots, which includes mainland Chinese associations, academics, as well as business representation. Now, the election committee will also be given more powers. They will now have the power to nominate as well as elect legislative council members, that's lawmakers that get to vote on laws in Hong Kong. And finally, any chief executive candidate will now need to garner a minimum of 188 nominations from this election committee. Previously, that number was 150, and on top of that, each sector has to have a minimum of 15 votes before a candidate can be put forward for the chief executive race. The second big change, of course, as I mentioned earlier, was the Legislative Council. Now, the Legislative Council, the number of seats will increase from 70 currently to 90. So that's an additional 20 seats. Now, what the National People's Congress in approving the electoral reform package didn't say was how the makeup of this 90 seats will be. Currently, the 70 seats are evenly distributed between functional constituencies, that's special interest groups, and geographical constituencies, which means that they get voted by the man on the street. We are hearing news that the possible makeup of the electoral going forward could be 40 seats that will be given to the election committee. That's the committee that elects the chief executive. 30 seats will be given to the functional constituency. That's the special interest groups, and then only 20 seats will be given to the geographical constituency. So that cuts down by quite a lot the number, the number of seats that the man on the street can actually vote for.